Welcome back to the Paddle and Fin Podcast Network. We're brought to you by Yak Gadget for all your fine quality kayak fishing accessories. Go to yakgadget.com. Pelican cases, coolers, and lighting. Go to pelican.com. And the 153 Bait Company for all your hard and soft bait needs. Go to the 153angler.com. So join with me as together we dive into the tips and techniques that will help make us better anglers out on the water. Welcome back to the Bass Fishing for Noobs segment here on the Paddle and Fin Podcast. I am your host, Sean Lavery. So thanks again for joining me this evening. Tonight, for the first time on the Noobs show, we have a guest who's actually been on Paddle and Fin quite a few times before. He's been on the final cast with Brad and Josh, once for Wilderness Systems and once for his own line of brand of clothing line that hopefully he'll talk about a little bit tonight. But I wanted to bring on Josh Chrenko from the Smallie Talk podcast to talk about Fall River Smallies. Welcome to the new show, Josh. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, Sean, what's up, man? How are you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. Been a busy weekend for me. I had a tournament yesterday, and I was just waiting for that awesome fall smallie bite that everybody's been talking about, and I actually stunk it up. I had a rough day. I caught 3 fish, 2 were measurable, and all the places I thought I knew where they would be, they weren't. And I've been listening to the Faith and Fishing podcast, and my friend Cam over there does a segment called Learn from My Mistakes. And one of the mistakes I made was first I caught a fish second cast out on the water on
classic
on top water, and I was like, oh, this is going to be epic. This is going to be the best day ever. And I kind of gave up on that topwater bite. I was like, well, I had a plan that I wanted to go execute. And I was like, well, I'm going to just put away my topwater and go down to this spot where I, almost always catch fish. And I probably should have stayed because I had 2 more misses on that topwater before I had left that spot. And, so learn from my mistakes. If you have something that seems like it's working, stick with it a little bit. So.
Yep, for sure, man.
But yeah, so for the folks who haven't heard you on Brad and Josh's show, just give the folks a little intro to who Josh Chrenko is.
Yeah, sure, man. Well, I would describe myself first and foremost as like just a smallmouth fanatic. Started fishing really when I was a little kid, real old enough to walk. I had a rod in my hand. My dad was a big bass fisherman and did mostly like largemouth stuff growing up. I had a boat, I had a bass boat before I had a car. Fish. My dream was like be a professional bass fisherman. I idolized, the Kevin Van Dams of the world, and had read Bassmasters magazines, nonstop, and just as life kind of, as everybody knows, takes turns and unexpected things. I ended up kind of not fishing for, I don't know, it was probably 5 or so years of my life. I fished a little bit, but just wasn't using my boat like I wanted to. And, it had to do with girls mostly. It happens a lot of times. I've seen it time and time again. And then I remember I sold my boat and I bought a kayak as kind of like a little, like, oh, well, I don't have a boat. I can, at least go get out in a kayak. My brother-in-law, he had bought one, same one as me, just a little crappy, sit inside $300 special, and what it did is it got me out on the river because I really, before that, I'd fished some tournaments in my boat on rivers, but it was pretty limited where you could go. And in Indiana, which is where I'm from, the rivers around here aren't very big, and the ones that we do have are pretty shallow. And I really just didn't have, other than wading creeks and catching smallmouth like that, I really just didn't have any experience putting much time into the rivers. And I always kind of knew smallmouth were cool. It's kind of one of those things like, yeah, they're really cool fish. There's always need to catch, but, just didn't catch them very often. And that kayak got me out on the river. And, man, it didn't take long before I was like, this is so freaking cool. Like I can go out, there's nobody out here. I don't have all these boats and jet skis whizzing around me. And I'm catching these fish that like fight twice as hard as a largemouth, and they're like exploding on top water. And it really, that was probably about, you know, well, gosh, I'm 36. So it was probably 12 or 13 years ago that I sort of fell in love. And back then, kayak fishing wasn't really a thing. Like it was just kind of getting started. Like
Right.
there was like, a couple companies that had some like decent kayaks, but like nothing like it is today. And so it was kind of like right place, right time. That kayak industry was growing. I was getting into kayak fishing at the same time, and all these new kayaks were coming out. I was meeting, the Drew Gregorys and the Eric Jacksons and all those guys that like are now pretty staples in the industry. And it really just, it was like, once I fell in love with that, I kind of just, I'm the kind of guy when I really fall in love with something, I dive in head first. And, after really pursuing catching smallmouth for, several years, getting better and better and better at it, people were asking me to take them out, that sort of thing. Decided to start a podcast. We're in our third season of that, finishing up our third season. And, Smallie Talk's what it's called. Basically, all we do is just talk about smallmouth fishing. And it's, I would say it's probably about 80% man boy humor and then 20% fishing. My co-host is one of the funniest guys I know. He's a friend of mine that grew up with, really good friends with my brother, and we both just eat up with smallmouth fishing. And then, just this year started, as you mentioned, started a clothing company. And, I own a small business. I've owned a small business for about 10 years. That's what I do for a living. I do like medical devices, but it's not something I super passionate about. I enjoy it, but it's kind of like, I do it for a living. And I was like, man, I really want to start up another business in the fishing industry. And, after a bunch of different kind of planning sessions and stuff, I brought in a couple business partners, and we started this business called Achigan. And it's essentially right now it's just clothing, and it's all kind of based off of our love for smallmouth. All the designs, everything are based off of just people who like to fish for smallmouth. And we're growing, put a lot of effort into that this year. And that's kind of defined my 2021 so far, as hours and hours and late nights and planning sessions and, everything that I poured into that. So that's just getting started. But I guess that's me in a nutshell, man. I just love smallmouth, and everything I do is related to smallmouth. So.
Well, listening to your guys' podcast, you can kind of tell. I mean, I'm not sure if you still have the same intro, but you had this person kind of yelling at the beginning, like
Yep.
"Woo!" And
Yeah.
I'm like, you just know you're in for a fun time when you listen to that. So, and
Yeah. Yeah, that's the river call, man. Whenever we catch a nice smallmouth on the river, dude, we go berserk. Like it's if there's multiple guys out there, like you can hear us from like half a mile away. So yeah, we go nuts out there for sure. So
that's awesome. Yeah. So, guys, definitely check out the Smallie Talk podcast. It's tons of great information, fishing in general, but specifically for smallies. I know you guys have had a lot of guests on that I've learned a ton from. Juan Verut was one guy.
mm-hmm.
I sought him out after hearing him on your show. I went to a couple of seminars and then eventually got him on our show because he is just a wealth of river knowledge. And but yeah,
Yep.
there's tons of great info, and so and I definitely check out the Achigan Brand. That it seems like really cool. I mean, especially if you're a Smallie lover. So, well, at the end of the show, we'll get you to tell the folks where they can find you and stuff like that. But
Yeah, no problem, man.
in the meantime, I wanted to pick your brain about fall Smallie fishing. They say they're strapping the feed bags on. It's going to be lights out, and is that generally your experience?
Yeah, so fall is a transition time. You have like in like really in we talk about smallmouth, but they're bass, right? Like bass in general behave about the same. Like there's some nuances here and there, but like when you talk about largemouth, same thing, spots, same thing. Like they're doing the same sort of migrations. Now, what makes, I'm fishing in a river, so there's definitely, we do fish in Lake some, but it's there's just not a lot of lakes around here with smallmouth. But there's not smallmouth aren't like super unique in what they're doing. But fall is a transition period. So you kind of, if you look at the seasons, like if you break down the seasons, right, you have, kind of early spring when they're coming out of winter. And then, you have what everybody likes to call pre-spawn, which is like probably my favorite time of the year to fish. Like pre-spawn is like super fun. And pre-spawn is a transitional period, right? You're going from the winter to spawning. Like that's a transition. And that transition requires them to, it's part of their primal instinct to feed. And they're feeding because the spawn is a very strenuous time for them. So the spawn is like takes a lot of their energy. And if you ever caught post spawn bass, right, they're usually super skinny. And yeah, they laid
Right.
their eggs and everything, but they're skinny because they've expended a ton of energy and they haven't really eaten. They're guarding nests, they're laying eggs, like they're doing all those things, and they're not paying attention to feeding themselves. They're concentrated on breeding, and then you have summertime, post spawn, summertime comes, and the fish kind of go into their like you know um, I would say they're more like protective routine. Like they're just kind of living life. Summertime is kind of their like regular, just like we go to our spots. I live this side of the river, or I live this part of the lake. We're just hanging out, doing our thing, trying to stay in some cool water, and we'll eat some, we won't eat other times. And then fall comes, and that's what fall is kind of the same as pre-spawn. It's a transitional period, and like they know that it's getting ready to get cold. um, the their forage that they're eating, their forage is going to start dwindling. It's going to get less and less, and their metabolism is going to slow down because the water is going to get colder. So they know in that transition period, like they have to feed because that food that they're eating in the fall has got to last them through the winter time. So that's why fall is sort of special, just like pre-spawn, is it's transitional, right? So their primal instinct to feed is triggered. Now, it's not that simple though.
It
If
never is. It never is.
yeah, like if fishing was like that simple, you could just anybody could go out and do it. And that's the cool thing about fishing, right? Fish are, I wouldn't say they're very smart, but they're just unpredictable, you know. And the fall time for me, at least, so pre-spawn, which is your other like, really kind of popular transition, that's all driven by water temperature, in my opinion. Like you can, if you find the water temperature is spiking, and you find the warm water, like you'll find feeding fish. The fall is not really like that. You're not like the water's cooling down. Um, Fall is more about finding like where the bait fish are. But in my experience, the feeding is very sporadic, and I don't know if I've really ever been able to figure out like any like pattern necessarily of like, oh man, this is happening. Like in the springtime, it's like you have like 2 or 3 warm days in a row, and you're like, man, I need to get out there because those
Right.
fish are going to be feeding. The fall, sometimes if you get a cold snap, it will trigger them. But like sometimes it's weird. Like they'll feed for a couple days and they'll stop. They'll feed for a couple days and they'll stop. And I would say I'm not the best fall fisherman in the world. Like if there's one like weakness in my game, like I have trouble in the fall time. Really, like to me, it's like more of like you're either out on the right day or you're not.
Right. Right.
Um, but that's for me, I guess that's where how would I explain fall to people who are just kind of learning this sport. And you know you have, from a location standpoint, in the summertime, those fish are all spread out, especially your big fish. They're real territorial, so they're going to be like in their little their tree that they hang out in. They're in their riffle of their hand. They're in their little like domain. And the fall is when they start going from that place to where they're going to winter. And that's when you'll start finding them in wintering holes. And I can explain in wintering holes. I don't want to get too deep into it before we start, we can get a little more nuance with our conversation. but it's a transitional period. That's probably the best way to explain it. So,
And I know in my experience, I fish both lakes and rivers. I have the Susquehanna right by me, but I also have lakes. And in the
mhm.
fall on the lakes, generally what I'm doing is going around looking for bait balls, and
Yep.
but there is no pattern to where they are other than where the bait balls are.
Mm-hmm.
I in the summertime on the lakes and stuff, I know spots and I can go to those spots and usually catch them. But in the fall, it was almost the same as the river. Like I went to all my normal spots, and that's just not where they are. They're where the bait fish is. Period.
Mm-hmm.
And but on the river, it's a little weird because I don't generally, even in the fall, have much luck looking for bait balls, if you will, just mainly because the river is so shallow, and I don't use my fish finder much.
They don't
So if they're
school
not
up
bust
like they do.
right
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
lake, so there's definitely it's definitely a different game on the river. So that's what I was kind of curious, what kind of places you start to look for. Are you? I remember like Juan talking about finding the wintering holes and then finding the stops along the way to the wintering holes, and that's where he tends to start looking. Is that kind of been your experience, or where you
Yeah.
shoot to?
Yeah, for sure, man. Like wintering holes, and it's one of those things is, like when I first started like fishing, one, I didn't fish in the wintertime. So like, I didn't really understand where those fish were that time of year. Um, but I remember one particular trip I actually took with my dad. It was an overnight trip to one of our local, I would consider it my home river. It's pretty, it's like a mid-sized river. Um, it's one of those, like, it's a pool riffle type of river, so there's like very distinct, like fast water, slow water, fast water, slow water. And it was in like late October, and it was really low and really clear, and you could just visually see the fish. Like you could just see them. And I remember like seeing like groups, like packs of smallmouth, like big smallmouth, like 17, 18-inch smallmouth. And
Nice.
I'm like, man, this is interesting. And we got on a pattern, because prior to that, I didn't really understand the migratory, like, patterns of smallmouth. I just kind of knew, like, you just fish for them, and yeah, you fish on bottom or whatever. Well, we got on like a dead stick, like Cinco bite that particular trip. And what we ended up finding was, like, when you would find an area where I would actually find rough fish. So, and this is a really good technique for those who are in like shallower, clear rivers. So smallmouth and carp and catfish, they all winter in the same spots. So like if you find like a bunch of like big concentration of like carp in October, like the carp typically move in first before the smallmouth do. Like that's where the smallmouth are going to winter. Like they're going to winter where those carp are. And everybody thinks like, oh, well, it's a deep, slow area. Yeah, but there's more nuance to that. I found some areas where I'm like, man, this is a great wintering hole. And like there's no fish there in the wintertime. Like there's just not. And a lot of it has to do with protection. So if the river floods in the wintertime, they need a place to go to like really get out of that current, because they're so lethargic in the wintertime that they can't expend enough energy to like survive if a flood washes them out.
Right.
The other thing, they don't move that far in free flowing rivers. Now, if there's a reservoir and it's dammed up, that's different. They'll run way upstream to the reservoir, to winter, because that's the safest place. But if it's a free flowing river and there's no reservoirs, like they're gonna usually, like, where they spawn, where they winter, and where they're in the summertime is gonna be like within like 3/4 of a mile to a mile.
Interesting.
Pretty like small area. And it's cool because if you find a big fish, like in the summertime, if you like miss a big fish, like you're like, oh man, that was a huge fish. And we've all been there,
Mm-hmm.
usually you can find out where that fish is going to be at in the wintertime, because it's like, all right, this fish is here in the summer. Like, where's the spot where they'd be in the wintertime? And you can if you get to know a river well enough, you can be like, oh, all these fish that are in the summer spot, this is where they have to be. And it's like usually a deeper area. Sometimes it's not the deepest, but it's going to be protected. It's going to be slow. There's usually going to be like a turn in the river or some kind of like feature that protects them when it's high. Like another way you can find winter spots is not that you want to be on the river, but when it's flooded, you can go see what areas are protected and what aren't. Because if you got water just ripping through there, they're not going to winter there because there's no protection.
Right.
But when you do find those wintering spots, especially if it's like, like an area, you're like, man, there's a bunch of big fish in this area. All those big fish are going to this one spot. And the most vulnerable that they are, it's probably like the middle of the fall because where they're going to be at. They're going to be actively feeding, and they're all going to be in one spot. And usually the water's pretty clear, so you can pick them off too. So it can be a really fun time to fish, but sometimes like right now. I went out the other day and it was like 6 inches of visibility, and we're like, well, like
Right. Right.
there are no visual takes going on, and it's like I don't know where the fish are at because I can't see them. We weren't getting any bites. So, if you have some clear conditions, that's if it's really clear. If you have a river close to you that you're like, man, I really want to learn this river. I want to learn how to fish it in the fall. When it's really clear, just go and paddle. Like put your rod up, go paddle, go find the catfish, go find the carp, and then if you sit around long enough, you'll see some smallmouth in there. When they're moved in, like they're here where we're at, they're not there yet. It's probably about, I would say, 2 to 3 weeks of maybe one cold snap, and they'll be in there, and they'll usually be in there from like around here from like the second week of October through like the second week in November is when they're like still pretty active, and then they
Right.
start getting real lethargic, and really hard to catch. So
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we're this week. We're just coming back from a high water event. We had some flooding last week, and so the flow was still pretty fast, but not unpaddleable. I went out earlier in the week, had an awesome evening, just throwing a tube. Caught I was only out for an hour and a half before after work before it got dark, and I think I caught 7 in that hour and a half. And then
nice.
so I was thinking, that's where I went on Saturday morning, thinking, oh, it's still a little high, and nothing. So it definitely does make a difference. I mean, that was 3 days, really 3 days later, I think, from that other event, and so the water level had dropped. It was definitely clearer when I went out on what was that Wednesday? I think it was still pretty murky. I happened to find a spot right where a creek was coming out into the main river, and you could kind of see those two different lines hitting, and that was where I was fishing and did real well. But by Saturday morning, it was pretty clear, especially in the lower, shallower areas. Now, deep, it was still a little more murky. I think I probably had maybe a foot and a half visibility. Um, but definitely in the shallows, I could see what was going on. So
Yeah, it
it definitely.
definitely it helps, man. When it's clear for me, like it's a like even if I don't catch fish, like or do as well, because sometimes you get those muddier conditions and the fish are just on, and it's fun because you're not spooking them. You can throw big, huge stuff or big annoying stuff. You don't have to worry about you know casting lightly and all. So it's fun to do that. But man, when the river's clear, I feel like I can really break the fish down way quicker because I can see like, oh, there's fish here, there's not fish here, or I can see them chase my bait and how they're reacting to it and that sort of thing. Like, and that all like when you're, trying to like create a pattern when you're out there, like you should always be like you should never catch a fish and like not analyze it. Like every fish you catch from where you caught it. I mean, in a kayak, it's super easy. Just go paddle over where you caught it, look at it, and be like, all right, oh, I mean, how many times have you done that? Like you caught a fish and you're like, man, where did that thing come from? You paddle over there and there's some feature that you couldn't see,
Yep.
and you're
Oh
like,
yeah.
man, oh yeah. And then you take that and you're like, okay, well, let's look for more of those things. Um, And when the water's clear, it makes it way easier to do that. Whereas when it's muddy, sometimes I get like, I don't know where that thing came from. Like I don't have any context clues to it. So it makes it harder to put together a pattern for me. So.
And one thing I noticed after this last flood event that we had is structure that I was there was gone, and new structure was in places where I didn't expect it to be. I'm like, so that laydown, that submerged laydown that I had hit, all summer long. I went back there and I'm like, oh, it is gone. It's no longer there. But then
that's a river for you, man. It's
yeah.
constantly changing,
Well, and then the water level will change, and there'll be like a grass island will show where you weren't even sure that that was a high spot before, but
right.
I'm like, I swear I don't remember that being there, but it is crazy how the river changes. On a lake, when you mark structure, it's pretty much going to be there every time you go back. But on a river, that's no guarantee, especially when you get the kind of flows that we get sometimes. So,
and the Susquehanna is a beast. First of all, like that river is like so big. Like I've only been there one time. I fished with Juan and a few other guys, and man, like that was one of those, the first time you get on it and I'm like, holy crap, this thing is huge. But it's cool because it fishes like a smaller river. I mean, it's got like, there's some uniqueness to it. Like you have those ledges that run across, which is like, you don't see that anywhere else. Like I don't know if I've ever seen a ledge that ran across a mile wide river. Like that's just not something you see every day. But like the boulders and the islands and the grass islands and all that stuff, like I feel like it fishes like a bunch of little smaller rivers put together. And it's cool. I mean, that's one of those rivers, like, dude, I'd be a mess if I lived where you lived. Like, I'd probably be divorced. Because I would be like, dude, I'd be out there all the time. We don't have anything even close to that cool around where I'm at to fish. So
and that's one of the things, like talking to some of the other paddle and fin hosts, and I totally took for granted, when they'd say, "Oh, I'm fishing the river this weekend." In my mind, I'm picturing fishing the Susquehanna. And like Brad would talk about the the Little Miami or the Duck River down where I forget where Duck is, down in Tennessee, I think, but it's like 100 feet wide in spots, and that's like the widest spots. And it just blew my mind that I'm like, wait, this is not the same thing that I'm talking about.
Totally different. And Susquehanna is not like all dammed up too. I know there are some dams on it, but for the most part, it's free flowing, and it does get flooded. Like it changes. A lot of those bigger rivers that you see, they're impounded, and like they control the flow. So like the trees and stuff, a lot of times it's kind of like a lake. It never really like gets blown out. Like Susquehanna, dude, I mean, it gets blown out just like a little creek does, except it's like huge.
Yep. And that just last week that happened, and it's crazy. It's not safe to be out there. It definitely takes, and they say, oh, fish the rising water, and I'll do it as long as I know I can paddle, but it quickly becomes unpaddleable. And even if there's even times I've seen it where even a small boat wouldn't be able to make headway. It's flowing that good. I forget. I remember the one time last summer I was talking to a guy, and he said the flow right now is double what Niagara Falls is, and that just blew my mind. I was like, yeah, and that I went down, and there's huge trees just booking downriver. There's no way.
That place is no joke. Yeah, you don't want to be out there when it's flooded. Honestly, if I lived out there, dude, I'd have a freaking $50,000 rock proof jet boat. I don't know if I would kayak fish because it's just so big. Like, it's like a kayak. It's like, man, it's hard to even like I said, when I first got out there, I'm like, well, I guess I'll go fish one of these islands out here. Just like paddled over there, caught an 18. I'm like, holy crap, dude, this thing's full of smallmouth.
Yeah, it's overwhelming when you first look at it, but it does give you the opportunity to really break it down, and there's so many areas that you can different areas. There's sandbars, there's ledges, like you said, creek mouths, rocks and boulders and islands and bridges and you name it. And I don't have to drive far to try different things. Now, that being said, the tournament that I fished this weekend, it was an hour and a half. Like I can be at the Susquehanna in 15 minutes, but then this tournament was an hour and a half north of me, up on the north branch and west branch of the Susquehanna, and that fish is sometimes entirely different than the stretch that's right by me. So
I'm
it's
sure
it's the same but different, and that's another cool thing about it. And I can drive an hour and a half north. I can drive an hour and a half south, and down into Maryland where it starts getting down towards the bay, and it's another completely different.
Stripers and stuff there, aren't they?
Yep.
Yeah.
Where in the Susquehanna Flats and down getting towards the bay, you have the stripers, and now snakeheads down there. Snakehead's the new big thing down on that end. So
that's cool.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique fishery, and I'm blessed to live close. And luckily, I moderate my fishing enough that my wife still, tolerates me.
It's a constant challenge for sure.
Amen to that, man, for sure.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, anytime I'm sitting around, I'm like, you know what? In 15 minutes, I could be fishing.
Yeah, but, yeah. I don't have that problem. Like I said, it's probably a good thing. I've looked at property on a couple of the rivers around here because I really would like to get either a house or like a cabin or something like that. But I think it's probably good for a home base to be like at least 30 minutes from a good river, because if it's not, dude, it's bad news. But yeah, it's definitely cool, man. How far are you from like Harrisburg area?
About half an hour from Harrisburg, half an hour south.
Damn, dude. Yep. Oh my God.
Yep.
Yeah, and I know that place is like off the chain. Like it's crazy good. I was texting a guy tonight about it. He was like, we were talking about the Susquehanna, and it came up something, and I remember I had one evening. So we camped at it's the ferry boat campgrounds, and there's a ramp right there, and so we go out fishing during the day, and I'm already there, dude. I'm gonna fish. I'm fishing all day. Like I'm not gonna go back and I'll like drink beer when it's dark out. Like I'm not I'm not gonna do it during the day. Well, we'd do the main float, come back, and then I would just go launch at the ferry boat, the little ramp or whatever.
Campground ramp. Yep.
Yeah. So it's like it wasn't high there, and it was probably pretty like normal summer stage. So it's still, that river's moving. Like to paddle upstream in it, like it takes you're working pretty hard, especially with no pedals. And I paddled up. It was probably like 7:30. It was going to get dark around 9:30. I put in at 7:30, paddled all the way up, and I got up as far as I could go. I paddled for like 45 minutes straight. And I was like, I'm going to go as far as I can go, and then I'm going to turn around, and I'm just going to float back as the sun's setting. And so I get up there into this island, and I kind of get out and get prepped up, and I was like, all right, I'm going to turn around. And, dude, I started floating back down, and it was crazy. There were fish. Every one of those grass islands, at the very tip of it, there were like smallmouth busting on like bait fish. And I was throwing a spinner bait, and dude, it was like everyone you'd come to. I didn't have time to anchor anything. I just get like 2 or 3 casts, and I just like whack, whack, whack. I was whacking fish. I ended up in like an hour and a half. I caught 12 fish over 18 inches.
Wow.
I was like, dude, this place is nuts, dude. There's so many huge smallmouth in here. And I know that was in 2018. I know it's not fished as well the last couple of years from what I understand. But I think this year has been pretty good from what I've heard.
No, I would say the last 2 years for me have been really good. There was like 2 or 3 years that I would say were down years. I remember talking to a smallmouth guide somewhere around 2018, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm taking clients out for catfish right now because I can't catch smallmouth."
Yeah, I heard that. Joe Raymond was talking about that. I was messaging him about it, and he was like, "Yeah, he feels like the flatheads have eaten all the smallmouth." I'm like, "Dude, there's so many smallmouth in there. That's not even possible." And I caught it when I was there. I caught it. I don't know, it's probably a 30-pound flathead on a crankbait.
Yep.
Towed me around for about 40 minutes.
Nice.
Yeah, so I know they're in there too, but dude, this smallmouth that place is just like it's the perfect that stretch right there through Harrisburg. Like I don't know how far up that good water goes, but it's just like the most perfect smallmouth habitat. Like the you could if you like when God created that, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna make this like the perfect smallmouth river there, and I'm gonna make it a mile wide. I mean, it's like it's just so great. If it weren't for us screwing it up and polluting it, it
I was
probably
going to say
would
that's
be unbelievable.
the one bad thing they say about Harrisburg is the pollution up there.
Yeah,
That at one point there was like open sewage just going in there, and like
yeah,
so. But like you said, it's definitely rebounding. The some of those companies that were dumping stuff in have been stopped, and some finally I think turning the tide on that a little bit, and you can tell because the smallmouth fishing is just back on the rise again.
that's
So
good. Good to
yeah,
hear. I'll have
yeah,
to go back there next year.
yeah,
So
definitely. If you're in the area, let me know. I'll
for sure,
definitely
man.
you can bunk here. I got a spare bedroom if you're looking for a place to stay.
Nice. Yeah, I'll bring the jet boat. I'll bring kayaks, the raft. I'll bring all of it.
Nice.
uh, but yeah, it's cool, man. Well, I guess getting back to fall, is there anything specific that you're like you think we should cover?
I was
You know.
wondering, do you change up baits or tactics at
Mhm.
all in the fall?
Yeah. So I definitely changed stuff up, no doubt. Like kind of like what you were saying is like it's typically gonna be more of a bait fish bite than it is a like your traditional crawfish or whatever. But here's what I have found is that if the fish are not feeding actively on bait fish, you can still catch them on like a crawl imitation. So it's kind of an either or for me. If they're like being aggressive and feeding on bait fish, and you can usually figure that. And it's weird in the fall. Sometimes they'll go like through periods of the day where they'll feed and then they'll stop.
Hmm.
And usually you'll see like the bust, like you'll see fish, running shad up on the bank, or you'll see them like hitting stuff like real aggressively. You'll catch a fish and they'll be puking out bait fish, that sort of thing. And then, that may die down certain parts of the day, or, the next day may not be the same. And that's when, if you kind of know where they're at, they're going to be really close to those wintering holes. And, kind of classifying a winter hole, you have like the part where they actually winter, which is like the really like deeper slow area. It's like going to be like maybe in some cover, and it's going to be like really protected. And then you have like think of it like a pool, you know, you have like a top of the pool where it's like fast water, and you have the bottom of the pool where the pool's starting to pick up speed and into the next fast water section. And they'll usually be like in the top or the bottom of those pools
Right.
in the fall, and you'll catch them. And then sometimes they'll be cruising maybe on the banks where it's a little shallower. They won't be like in the deep spot. You catch them in the wintertime and they're like stuck to the bottom. I've caught them with mud on their bellies
Right.
before. They're
Right.
like down in the deepest part. Um, and that's like I said, it's either like a bait fish imitation, which for me is always going to be a fluke, because I don't think anything imitates it as well as a fluke. You can throw spinner baits, you can throw other things, and they'll hit them. I just think a fluke is like the best, or anything like a soft jerk bait for me is like the best imitation of like an actual like injured bait fish that you can throw. Um, and then if they're on bottom, like a Ned rig or a tube or something, just imitates a crawfish. I love those in clear water, those um, crawl Z's,
Yep.
on a little offset Ned head. Like to me, that's like it doesn't get any better than that from a crawl imitation in clear water. They just like do it looks just like a little crawfish. So I'll like usually just those two things, and then you'll get on some top water bites like in the fall, like if they're chasing. I don't personally think that's the most effective. Like in the fall, topwater bite can be had, but I think if they will hit topwater, they'll probably hit a fluke and they'll hit a fluke better. Is
Okay.
sort of my theory behind it.
Well, that's on Saturday morning. I got that first hit, like second cast, and then I was throwing a spook, and they kept just bumping it, not
Hmm.
committing to it, and that's why I kind of gave up on that and went down. But you're probably right. If I would have tied on something that would have been a little subsurface, maybe, not quite just on top. I think and I had just watched a video on fluke fishing about you know that it really works well because you can, depending on the size hook you use and stuff, you can cover different parts of the water column with it. If you use like a lighter gauge wire, you can
Oh yeah,
cover more of the top, but if you use a heavier gauge wire and like a little denser soft plastic fluke, that you can sink it down a little bit and get those the fish that aren't necessarily targeting stuff on top. So
yeah, super versatile. I mean, that's if dang Gene Jensen hadn't taken the fluke master name, that's what I would probably call myself. I just love a fluke to me is that's like the ultimate versatile bait. You fish it really spring, summer, fall, even wintertime. I've caught them on fluke in the wintertime, just dead sticking it all the way to the bottom. Like just so versatile. And for me, it's like I'm that's like my confidence bait because I know how fish react to it. I can throw it like you can skip it, you can put it anywhere. Like it's just a really, really versatile presentation. So for me, like I said, like you want to throw a spinner bait. I love throwing spinner baits, but that's more going to be like a dirty, cloudy water play for me. If it's clear, I'm gonna always default to a fluke. And then like I said, top water. Sometimes you know how that is. You top water, and I don't know. Maybe there's a hatch going on or
I was
some
just
kind
gonna
of
say, like, mayfly season on the Susquehanna is top water heaven.
yeah. Say something's going on where it's like they're looking up. And they're like, man, but I even think in those circumstances, they'll still hit a fluke because if they're looking up and they see a dying bait fish, like, or a bug, like they're probably going to hit either one of them.
Right.
So it's sort of my theory. I think topwater is probably a little bit more if you're sort of doing trophy hunting and you're like trying to catch bigger fish. Topwater is probably a little better for that. Fluke, you catch a lot of those mid-size, like those 13 to 15-inch fish on a fluke, whereas like topwater, you still catch them, but it's less frequent. When a big fish really wants topwater, like they're like, watch out, I'm gonna get it. So whereas like they'll fight fluke, man, you'll have one of them hit it and the next one will hit it, and topwater's not as much like that. So, but yeah,
I was looking for a guest to talk fluke fishing too. I like to cover technique specific things too, and so I sent out a couple of feeler, messages to people asking about, fishing flukes. A couple of people had done videos on that I saw in the past, and so I'm
mhm.
still on the search for my perfect fluke guest. But maybe I'll have to.
I love flukes, dude. I could at least do a segment for you on it.
That'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah, and to be honest, my preferred way to fish it is like a nose hook.
I was going to ask you
Um,
that.
Yep. So I'll give Juan credit on that. Like I watched one of his videos like 10 years ago on it, and he was like doing some thing and showing how he hooks it. And I remember because I was having, I'd always fished a fluke traditionally for largemouth Texas rig, and to me, smallmouth it just doesn't suit their strike style like that nose hook does. And that nose hook is basically I use a 2-aught wide gap Gamakatsu finesse hook, and I take it from the bottom of the fluke, and I basically hook about maybe half inch back from the nose of the fluke up through the bottom and then up through the top. And what it does, this is the main benefit of that rig. And you obviously can't fish that around grass and stuff, so it has its limitations. But the pivot point is at the front. And if you look Here, I tell you what, I got one right here. I'm gonna show you.
Cool. Yeah. Yep. Ooh.
Hang on here. So I got one hanging up here. So if you look, so this is somebody hooked this back. Oh yeah, there. Can you see that? Hey there, Sean. I lost your bud.
I'm here. I'm just
Oh, I got
I
you.
was making you bigger so people could see it.
Oh,
So
yeah, no, it's all right. Well, if you look, this is the type of hook I use, and so it's going through the bottom. It's back
whoops.
a little bit, and basically what that does is when you jerk it, it creates a pivot point at the front of the fluke. So instead of your hook being back here, like your line's right here, and when this darts, that kind of is like acts as a hinge at the front of the fluke. And really, if you compare them side by side, there is no comparison. Like a Texas rig action compared to like a nose hooked action, totally inferior compared to this. Um,
Okay.
and when the smallmouth, if you ever like pay attention when a fish hits something, like they usually are hitting at the nose. They're hitting at the front of the bait. Now, if they're hitting at the back, you're probably not gonna catch them anyways. That's like irregular. Like when a fish wanting to kill something, they hit it at the head.
Right.
And because you have this exposed hook, they eat it. And man, the hook sets are just like, you don't even really have to set the hook. I mean, I do kind of snap my wrist a little bit. And it usually, if it does it right, it's going to catch it right in that hard cartilage on the roof of their mouth. And like, dude, it ain't coming out. Like, it's hard sometimes. I have to, get some pliers out to get it out of their mouth. So hook sets are good. I have way higher hook set ratios with this rig. It's a better action. Like the only downside to it is like two downsides. One, you can't fish it around, real heavy cover or grass. So that's the only time when I'll fish like a Texas rig. The other part is you go through a ton of flukes because this it's only got this little bit of plastic and it just will tear. You'll like make a cast and the fluke will go boom, a mile into the woods. So I'd say I probably go through a pack of flukes every like 4 hours or so of
Are
fishing.
you mostly using like Zoom Super Flukes, or do you have a brand that you prefer?
Definitely Zoom Super Flukes is my preferred, and probably more just because I like the split tail. And there are other brands of split tails, so like I don't, not like I'm against another brand, but these are just so widely available. Like you can walk into any Walmart in any part of the country and get, 20 packs of flukes. Like to me, like and I go through them so frequently, I don't have time to like get on Tackle Warehouse and order these special ones. I just go through them way too much. Like if you look back behind me, I have boxes and boxes of flukes, dude, just like tons of them. Cause I go through them so much, and I keep colors really simple. White pearl. I use an albino shad, which is like kind of more translucent. So if it's like really clear, that albino shad does a good job. If it's just kind of normal clear, to like cloudy, the white. And then I just recently started using jet black flukes.
Okay.
And
I have not heard of that.
yeah, you can't get those at Walmart. You got to order those. So I ordered like 50 packs of them or whatever, because I was like, oh, those are cool. And that's like if it's a little dirtier water, and I wouldn't fish that in like super muddy water because a fluke doesn't really put off much vibration.
Right.
And I think that's important in muddy water. But like if you're like looking at 18 inches of visibility or so, which is like cloudy, to a little dirty, like those black flukes, freaking killer. So I probably shouldn't have said that, but like I use them and I've had some killer days on a jet black fluke. So
Interesting. I
yeah.
always kind of gravitate toward the whites and stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
I'll definitely have to linger a little longer in the fluke aisle next time and take a
Yep.
look see if I can find some black ones. So
Yeah, the black's pretty. I've only found them at like on Tackle Warehouse.
Okay.
But I mean, it's a stock color for Zoom. It's just not popular. So, and there are other shades of darker, you can get like a watermelon or green pumpkin
Yeah, I was gonna
that
say.
probably works similar. It's just, black is like, nobody else is throwing this. I'm gonna throw these. So, yeah.
And then line preference. You throwing floor carbon or a braid
Yes.
deleter?
So I'm pretty much across the board. Besides my crankbait rod, which is mono, I'm running braid with a fluoro leader, and I pretty much run a fluoro leader on everything besides like if it's muddy and I'm throwing a spinner bait or something like that. Like even some top water, I'll put some fluoro leader. It just depends on how clear the water is and that sort of thing. But fluke is if it's clear enough to throw a fluke, like I'm gonna have a fluoro leader, and I usually do like I try to honestly when I'm out there I take 3 arm widths uh of line, which is probably about 8 foot or
Mm-hmm.
so, and then that's my leader length, and I just keep using that leader until it gets short enough to where I'm like, all right, I need to retie. But
Yep.
yeah.
Sounds very similar to my setups. On the river, pretty much every rod I throw is braid to leader. With the same thing, I basically do a rod and a half length of leader, which generally just enough to keep the knot out of the reel.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, for sure. And I will say the fluoro is one thing I don't mind spending money on. I'm not like a gear guy. Like I have, um, I have nice setups, but they're not like, JDM stuff or anything like that. But like the fluoro, I really, really like the Sunline FC Sniper. That's like I've went through all of Seaguard's stuff. I went through, about every kind of um, fluoro you could have, and dude, that stuff is just bulletproof. Like it's so good. I've had it break a couple times, but it's probably my fault.
right.
I just should have retied and I didn't. But I've never had it go bad like before it should have. Um, and that's to me is the hallmark of a really good fluoro.
And
So
the nice thing about doing just leaders is you're not, burning a whole spool at once.
oh yeah,
A spool will last you quite a while when you're
throwing
doing.
pure fluoro sucks. I've done it before. It's like, dude, this is terrible. I mean, I'm sure they make those like kind of hybrid lines. I know Uzuri makes one that guys like a lot, so I'm sure that would be better. But like, I haven't found a pure fluoro that casts like even close to the way braid casts.
Right.
So, and braid has its frustrations, gets knotted up, it gets twisted easily and that sort of thing. But braid I have confidence in that. Over the years, I've tried different things, and it's like that. I use that super slick Power Pro. It's pretty much that 8-strand braid on my open faces, and I do throw a fluke with an open face.
Okay.
Pretty exclusively. I have a 7-foot medium light with a 2500. Uh, I don't even remember what the Shimano. It's a real popular one. They changed it to the Vanford this year.
Okay.
Um, but um, but yeah, that's my go-to 7-foot medium light with the 2500 spinning reel, dude. I am surgical with that. So
I was just going to ask, and then your retrieve you vary it up at all, or it's pretty much cast, let it sink a little bit, jerk occasionally.
that's sort of like where I feel like experience with a fluke really like I never throw a fluke the same.
Okay.
Like I'm always doing something different, and sometimes like we had a trip recently where we went to Michigan, fished the Muskegon River, and we were in a jet boat. But my buddy, the other guy that hosts Smallie Talk with me, I was in the back of the boat at the time. He was in the front, and like we're both really experienced guys. Like he fly fishes more, but like he's still really good with conventional. And like, dude, I was catching like 4-1 what he was catching, and he was getting like pissed off, and he's like, dude, why? And he's in the front of the boat,
I was going to.
and I'm like, he's like, well, what are you doing differently? And I was watching him. I already knew what he was doing differently. Is like, I would throw it like, and there was like in that particular river, there's there's like a grass line, like a weed line, and it was off the bank, and the fish were kind of sitting like out from the weed line about a yard or so. And what I would do, I'd throw it kind of up right on the edge of the weed line, and I'd pop it a couple times, and then when I hit that weed line, I would just let it sink for like, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 seconds. And then really once I couldn't see it anymore, I just, just pop, pop. And then I'd let it sink again for 5 or 6 seconds. And dude, when it would sink, you'd see them, they'd come out and this is what's cool about a fluke. They'll come out and they'll like look at it. And then you can see them, they're like looking at it. And it's kind of like a game of like, you're like facing off with the smallmouth, like they're looking at it. And you just like, pop, and then they kind of come up again, and they look at it again, and then just keep, be patient, do it usually like the third or fourth time, dude. And then they were like, pow, they didn't hail it. And like he was working at jerk jerk, he let fall, jerk jerk, let it fall, jerk jerk, let it fall, and he just wasn't catching the fish. And like, dude, they're being really, really, really intentional about their eats. Like they're like being careful, and that's where, to me, a fluke, dude, you can't do that with anything else. You do it with like a suspending jerk bait, maybe. It's
Right.
probably the only other thing you could do it with. But like, there's no other presentation. I feel like it's like, oh man, you can visually do that and be that patient, and they will like come up, and you can see the whole shebang. And it's fun, dude. I mean, it's cool to see a smallmouth come up and just blast top water. But dude, when you like trick them into eating like that, it's a
Oh
whole
yeah.
different. That's a whole different like type of satisfaction you get, from that eat. So
Definitely. It's so neat when you can watch them and just know that you got their attention, they're following it, and now it's just a matter of being patient enough and not overworking the lure enough to scare it away.
yep.
Because I've had that happen too, where I start getting all, oh, he's there, oh, and then I do too much, and they're like, oh, never mind, I'm gonna go
Yeah, and
find
sometimes
something.
they want it like that. It
Right.
just sometimes they want like a perfectly like a good example of that would be like if you see him busting bait, like okay, well, like you work as fast as you can. You just like jerk jerk. You make
Right.
that thing super erratic because that's what the bait fish are doing. They're like running up to the top and they're skipping on top. Like you want it to do that, but
Absolutely.
like a lot of times, like especially neutral fish, because you have like active feeding fish, which would be like fish busting. You have kind of neutral fish, which are just kind of like hanging out and they'll eat if something's in front of them. And then you have fish that are just shut down, which that sucks.
Right.
You got to like touch them with the lure for them to eat it. Um, but like those neutral fish, a lot of times they do want that like slower. And I would say the guys that I've seen fish, I fish with, or like talk with, and like that's probably the number one thing they're doing wrong from a lure presentation standpoint is they're fishing it too fast. Guys want to throw buzz baits and spinner baits and crankbaits and things like that, which is great when they're actively feeding. But dude, if they're neutral, a lot of times you got to coax them into it. So
Right. Right. It's not necessarily a covering water technique, although it could be, potentially. But if you
mhm.
can see them, or where they are, then that's going to be something that I'm going to go to. You know,
Yeah, and
not
you can cover water with the fluke. You're not gonna cover it as much as like whopper plopper or something like that. But like, it's also not like working on bottom. And if you're working on bottom, dude, you got to anchor up. You got to watch your line. And that's really why you're anchoring up, because you have to like feel the bite. A
right.
fluke, you don't really have to do that. Like you see them eat it. Or if you do feel it, it's like usually like you feel like a tick, you'll feel that stuff. You don't have to sit there and like wash your line, go sideways.
Right. Yep.
So yeah, man.
Cool. Well, that was definitely some good info for sure. Now I'm excited to get. I just got, I had that tournament on Saturday, and I got home and an order of flukes had come in that I ordered. I forget what brand it was. I watched a video on it, and I was like, "Oh,
Nice.
I'll try that out." And I was
Yeah.
hoping they would be there for the Saturday tournament, and I got home from the tournament, and they were sitting on my, porch. But so now I'm excited to go try that, and definitely
Hell
I'm
yeah,
gonna have
dude.
to have you back on. We'll do a whole fluke episode and
Yeah.
really dig in deep.
Yeah, I'd love that, man. Yeah, flukes are king in my opinion. Just like they're really really good, and like I said, it takes time to learn how to fish it. There's a lot, but like I think it's fun too. I just like, I mean, if you're not having fun with what you're fishing, like what are you doing?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
it's all great, like those guys that have a drop shot and sit over 40 feet of water and watch their electronics, but I guess that's fun. Not for me.
And
But
not for me either.
yeah, it's like I'm out there, even if I'm fishing a tournament, it's like, dude, I want to have fun, man. Like
Right.
there's a lot
Absolutely.
of nobody's getting rich off of kayak tournaments.
Right.
It's like if you're doing something like that, it's like unless you're doing it like Jacob Wheeler style, and that's not very many guys are doing that.
Yeah, I was
So
gonna say there's few and far between, but
yeah.
and at the end of the day, it's what I do to relieve stress and to not do something that I don't enjoy doing. So
Yeah, for
it
sure, man. Guys take fishing way too seriously. And I'm serious about like, dude, I practice for tournaments and I get upset when I don't do well and all that stuff. Like, but at the end of the day, dude, like why did you start fishing? It's because it's enjoyable, and that's one thing, like I don't go out and fish places that like I don't like to fish. Like I'm not gonna go out and fish a huge reservoir for largemouth because like I don't like doing it. Like I've done it plenty of times and it's just not it's not what I don't get my kicks from that. So,
right.
rivers to me, man, it's just something about moving water and especially in a kayak, dude, you're so intimate in nature. You're like down on the water, you're the current's propelling you and you get to see those fish eat and so dude, it's so much fun.
Oh
So,
yeah, yeah. Just being carried along with the current, and then you'll hit a spot where an eddy will meet, and all of a sudden your kayak will just turn and just sit when
yep.
everything around you else is flowing like crazy, but you're kind of sitting right in that perfect spot, and then you
Yeah.
can start making casts from there. Yeah, it's
See so many cool stuff out on the river, man. Like cool birds and cool
oh, absolutely.
animals and like stuff when I was boat fishing. I was like, dude, I like turn the motor on. And I have a jet boat, so like in my jet boat's extremely loud because it's a two-stroke. It's you know, and that has its moments, but like there's nothing like a kayak or like I have a drift raft.
I
Like
saw pictures of that online. Yeah,
yeah, so this thing, both really similar to kayak, is like it's just like human propelled and like it's quiet and you're really in tune with nature. Like, dude, that's the ticket, man. It really is.
and I
So,
think that's why so many people fall in love with kayak fishing once they try it because it really is different.
oh yeah, yeah,
So
for sure. But yeah, as far as like your listeners, man, if anybody ever like wants to just a specific question about anything like on a river or anything like smallmouth related, like follow me on Instagram and shoot me a DM and like I will always answer you. Like whether it's on the Smallie Talk page or it's on my personal Instagram is about the bronze. Um, I will always respond. I was, sometimes my wife gets mad when I'm typing away on my phone, but guys are like, oh man, I'm headed up north. Like, we're thinking about going to this river. Like, what do you think about this and that? And like, I'll give you whatever information I have. So definitely don't be shy with that stuff.
cool.
So
So, and any other sponsors or anything you want to shout out?
yeah, so I think you mentioned Wilderness Systems, and I have a huge banner
Banner
behind
back
me
there.
there. Yeah, so Wilderness Systems, I've been on their fishing team for this is my fourth season, and definitely cool guys. Like I fish out of a Recon 120 HD. Got pedals for the first time this year after begrudgingly not getting them for a long time, and they definitely have their advantages. I ended up getting second place in a big tournament this year primarily because of pedals. Like I went upstream where everybody's floating downstream, and it helped me cover a lot of water going upstream because it's really hard to paddle. So those guys are great. They have put out a great product, and I think everybody kind of, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably know about Wilderness Systems. But the Recon is a great value price kayak with pedals. Good, really good kayak for sure. Sponsor wise though, I don't really do the whole pro staff thing. You know, I own my own company, so it's kind of like my sponsorship. So that's where my money is back into my companies. So, but yeah, I mean, Wilderness Systems has been good to me. So for sure.
And where can everybody find you? Both your clothing brand and Smallie Talk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Smallie Talk is like I said, we're in our third season, and we're on all the major platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google. Same thing that you guys are on. That's sort of how the podcast world works. Is you put it on a feed and everybody picks you up. And we're on pretty much all the major platforms. I think I did have to submit it to Spotify about a year ago. So, but yeah, so Smallie Talk is spelled with the IE, so SMALLIE Talk, 2 words. And then our Instagram is Smallie Talk Podcast, all one word. Achigan is we're kind of go by Achigan Brand because the Achigan is universally used for some other things. So at Achigan Brand on Instagram, our website is achiganbrand.com. And like I said, we have everything from this hat that I'm wearing here all the way to sun shirts and t-shirts. We got some new products we're launching. We're doing some like wintertime type stuff, some beanies, and eventually we're going to get into like technical gear. So we're going to get into, hopefully my goal is to grow that into like a Sims type of company.
Awesome.
So we're going to have some, we're going to dive into the wet wading world because I think it's an underserved market. We're going to maybe have some wet wading like pants and shoes and that sort of thing. So be on the lookout for that. But for right now, if you just want to show your love for smallmouth, we got a ton of cool stuff on our website that's for sale right now. So
awesome.
So yeah.
Cool, dude. Well, thanks again for coming on, spilling some juice about black flukes and all the other great information. And looking forward to having you on again sometime to really dive into flukes with me. So
yeah, for same, man. And then also for your listeners, if they want to go buy anything from us, I'll give a discount code here. It's Bleed Bronze 15. So I do not advertise that. I'll message it to people on Instagram if they're like, let me, ask me questions about stuff. But Bleed Bronze 15% off of your first order. So you can buy as much stuff as you want, but it's a one-time code. So if anybody wants to use it, feel free to use that. So
awesome, guys. So yeah, go definitely check it out. Use Bleed Bronze 15 to get 15% off. Thank you, dude. That's awesome.
Yep, no problem, man. It was great coming on, and yeah, I'll have to get on here on the fluke episode for sure.
Definitely. Awesome, man. Well, everyone, thanks for tuning in. This has been the Bass Fishing for Noobs segment on the Paddle and Fin podcast, where we bring you the techniques, the tricks, and the tips to help you rip more lips. Have a good night, and we'll catch you later.
Nice.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode on Paddle and Fin. Don't forget to go check out our website at paddle_and_fin.com. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel at Paddle and Fin. If you got a question, comment, want to hear from a future guest on a future episode, feel free to email us at paddle_and_fin@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paddle and Fin on Facebook and Instagram. Shout out to our show supporters, Angler. The Angler button and app just makes for a better time on the water and creates a virtual logbook for every fishing outing out on the water. Shout out to Rocktown Adventures, located in northern Illinois, for all your kayaking, camping, and hiking needs. Shout out to Jig Masters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to jigmasters.com